How do psychologists arrive at the insights we find in textbooks? How can we trust that the findings about memory, stress, or social behavior are accurate and not just opinions? The answer lies in the research process, a disciplined, structured, and transparent method that psychologists use to investigate behavior and mental processes. Now, this process includes two fundamental stages. The first is the context of discovery, where the ideas are born, and the second is the context of justification, where those ideas are tested, challenged, and shared. We'll also explore the roles of theories, hypotheses, and paradigms, the types of bias that can affect research, and the attitudes and safeguards that help in ensuring objectivity. Together, these concepts form the foundation of scientific psychology. Now, we'll start with the first one, which is the context of discovery. The context of discovery refers to the initial phase of research where a question is first formed. Now, this is the creative, intuitive, and imaginative part of the process, and it's often sparked by personal observation, a gap in an existing knowledge, or an unusual pattern that's been noticed in behavior. An example would be if a teacher notices that students seem to perform better in tests after they take short breaks, they might wonder, does taking breaks improve academic performance? Now, this curiosity becomes the seed for scientific investigation later. Let's look at the role of theories, hypotheses, and paradigms, especially in terms of the framework of discovery that we were just talking about. So, a theory is a general framework or system of ideas that helps explain a wide range of observations. In psychology, theories are essential tools for explaining why a behavior has occurred, predicting future behavior, and guiding further research. For instance, attachment theory explains how early relationships with caregivers shape emotional development. Now let's look at the term hypotheses. From a theory, a researcher will then develop a hypothesis, which is a testable statement that can predict a relationship between two or more variables. So let's take an example again. Children with secure attachments will show lower levels of anxiety in unfamiliar situations. Imagine that that's our statement. Variable is any characteristic or condition that can change, such as the mood or the memory or performance or sleep quality. Now, the hypothesis will allow researchers to study how changes in one of these variables may relate to changes in another variable. A paradigm is a dominant model or way of thinking in science. It influences what questions researchers ask, what methods they use, how they interpret these results. Historically, psychology has seen major paradigm shifts, for example, from structuralism to functionalism, from behaviorism to cognitive psychology. According to Thomas Kuhn in 1970, such paradigm shifts often lead to revolutions in knowledge. So once a theory or a hypothesis is developed, it must go through an ordeal of proof, and this usually involves designing a study, publishing the results in a peer-reviewed journal, allowing other researchers to replicate and verify the findings. Now let's take a look at another thing that we need to be aware of, which is research biases, especially in the context of discovery. Even with good intentions, researchers are human and they are subject to bias. They're not immune to it. So if not properly controlled, bias can distort the results and lead to false conclusions. So just to be aware, let's look at the different types of bias that we'll encounter when we're doing research. The first is personal bias. So when a researcher's beliefs or their experiences unconsciously shape how they collect or they interpret data, it's called as personal bias. So an example would be a researcher who's strongly in favor of meditation, and they might overlook the negative results that are coming in because they so badly want the results to be positive because they believe in meditation. The second one is observer bias. So when researchers interpret ambiguous behavior based on their expectations. So an example would be one observer may view a toddler's independence as confidence while another might see it as defiance. So it really depends on the person who's observing it to determine what they think it actually is. It could be interpreted as confidence or interpreted as defiance, and that's based on the person's perspective, right? So that becomes observer bias. Then there's expectancy bias, which is when researchers expect a certain result and unknowingly influence the participants, or they interpret the data to match their expectations. So this is why we usually have something called double-blind procedures, which is where we make sure that the result is completely anonymous, that there is no way in which the result could be influenced. And then there's of course the cultural and gender bias, and that's when a researcher's cultural background or their gender norms influence their assumptions about what is normal and what is acceptable in terms of behavior. So an example would be interpreting assertiveness in women as aggression, while praising the same trait in men as leadership. So depending on the culture that you're from, if women are normally seen doing household activities, being more domestic and not really being in the forefront of intellectual conversations and senior contributions in the workplace, then any assertiveness that the woman shows would be interpreted as aggression, whereas the same trait when it's seen in men is seen as an amazing trait of leadership. So that's another thing to be careful of in terms of cultural bias. Then there's the placebo bias. So this occurs when participants report improvement simply because they believe that they are actually receiving an effective treatment, even if the treatment is actually inactive. So when you have two groups of people, one is given the medication and the other is not given the medication, they're both given tablets. One has received the actual medication, the other one's tablet really doesn't do anything. It's just a placebo. And then people from the placebo group report that they are having significant changes in their body or in their symptoms. That actually is a placebo effect or a placebo bias, because they're expecting to see a change because they believe that they are receiving proper treatment. Now, this is why control groups and placebo conditions are vital in experimental designs. So recognizing and controlling bias is central to scientific integrity. And now let's look at the second part of things, which is the context of justification. So we looked at the context of discovery, and now we're looking at the context of justification. So after generating a hypothesis, researchers enter into the context of justification, which is where the scientific rigor really begins. Now this stage involves designing the study, and then you have to collect the data related to the study, analyze the results using valid methods, interpret the findings, and then publish it for peer review. It is here that the hypothesis is tested under controlled and replicable conditions. Let's see how scientific attitudes and values play an important role in this context of justification. So scientific research is more than just a set of steps, It's also a mindset. So psychologists must approach research with a set of guiding attitudes. The first is curiosity. They should have a desire to explore the unknown, to ask questions, to challenge assumptions. The second is skepticism, which means avoiding blind acceptance of claims and always seeking evidence before drawing conclusions. The third is openness, which means transparency in methodology, sharing of your data, and readiness to accept criticism or correction from others. The fourth is public verification. This is where research should be communicated in such a way that others can replicate and validate the results. Now, these values ensure that psychology remains a progressive and self-correcting discipline. Let's also take a look at objectivity safeguards, which are in place in research process to help in making sure that the research is occurring in a proper manner and it can be justified and it can be replicated, and it will be of use when we try and apply to general masses from a few select cases that we are doing in the experiment that we are doing. So to ensure that results are not influenced by bias or error, psychologists employ several important safeguards. Now, the first is procedural safeguards. Researchers keep clear and complete records of how data is collected, analyzed, and interpreted. And these records allow for peer evaluation and replication of the study by others. The second is standardization. All participants must be exposed to the same procedures, instructions, and conditions. For example, if you're studying the attention span of people, every participant should receive the same set of tasks under the same environment. The third would be operationalization, which means the abstract concepts which are in use in that particular research experiment should be defined in measurable terms. So for example, instead of just saying stress, a researcher might define stress as a score above 25 on the perceived stress scale. Operational definitions make it possible to measure, replicate, and compare results across studies. The fourth would be avoiding bias. Randomization, control groups, double-blind procedures, and pre-registration of studies all help in ensuring that personal or cultural biases do not influence the outcome. So these safeguards are essential for producing objective, ethical, and scientifically valid research. Now, in conclusion, the research process in psychology involves both creativity and discipline, and the context of discovery allows researchers to explore questions and develop hypotheses, while the context of justification ensures that these ideas are tested using sound scientific methods. Now, the role of theories, hypothesis, paradigms, and the ability to guard against bias are all essential elements of this process. Researchers must cultivate scientific attitudes and employ strict objectivity safeguards to produce results that are valid, replicable, and valuable to the broader field. And understanding this process is crucial not just for researchers but for any student of psychology, because it teaches us how to think critically, assess information, and contribute responsibly to knowledge.